Hey, how's it going? Welcome to this video. This video is called How to Beat Good Poker Players. So how do you beat good poker players? Well, it's extremely tough. Oh, you actually want to know how to beat good poker players? Okay, well, no, it is extremely tough. So the better the poker player, the closer they're getting to making perfect decisions, right? So literally, the harder and harder it gets to beat them. That's just the fact of life. However, you should never be intimidated by anyone at the poker table. Ultimately, the great thing about this game is you always have a chance. You always have a chance. Everyone, if we're playing Hold'em, gets 2 cards. They get the same options when the action's on them, and you can win any given hand of poker. And in fact, the difference between a really good poker player and a break-even player is not as big as it feels when you're actually at the table if you happen to be the break-even player or the less good player compared to the super pro, right? So never be intimidated. That's the first thing I want to say. I want to get a little bit more specific about what you actually do when at the table with a really good player. So let's dive into it. So how do you play a good poker player? First of all, you don't play them. Don't play is the tip. Don't play them. So this is genius advice, isn't it? How do you win? You don't play. Fantastic. There's a big picture point to be made here. And this is a little secret that professionals don't really talk about too much because they want to look like poker wizards. Most of your profit, even if you were to become a professional, will come from weaker poker players. And if not weaker in terms of the planet of poker players, then weaker at that limit or weaker in the game you're in. So profit for poker players doesn't tend to come from bashing heads against other good poker players for that small marginal gain, apart maybe from at the real elite levels, if you're playing a super high roller or something. And even then, the profit in the field tends to be from your wealthy businessman or whatever. So we're really not looking, this is not like some kind of endeavor where we're trying to prove ourselves. We're not looking to find the best poker players and prove we're better than them. We're looking for the most profitable types of games and the most profitable lineup. So if you're a cash game player and you've got a choice of 2 tables at your local card room and one of them's got 3 pros on it and the other's got no pros on it, you should always be sitting in the no pros in it game, unless you're looking to improve your game or unless you don't like money. That's what I'm talking about in terms of big picture. Tournaments wise, you want tournaments where you have an edge, where there are a lot of weaker players. So big picture, we don't want to be encountering them that much. Sometimes, of course, you are going to have to play them. They're going to be at your table. There won't be a choice of game or it's a tournament or whatever, right? Even now, we still don't want to play them too much. You should be hand selecting not only based on your cards, but also based on the opponents that are in the pot with you. So I don't want this video to make you super defensive. If you get dealt 2 aces, please play them, whoever's in the pot, right? But in that marginal band of decisions, you need to adjust for who's in the pot. If there's a weak player in the pot, you should be expanding your range of hands because that's a more profitable situation where you can exploit them. If there's a good player in the pot, you should contract your range of hands because it's going to be harder to play those marginal holdings against that good player. Now, I can't go through every single range of hands you should play, but you take the general point. Adjust from your norm based on who's in the pot and play less hands against good players. So it seems silly, but actually it's a trap people fall into, which is they play exactly the same, even if there's a good player in the pot or even if there's a good player on their immediate left or something like that. You must adjust. You don't want to be playing as many hands against good players. Now, the exception is when you get a shorter stack, obviously, in a tournament and things become much more mathematical. You can't then be folding just because you don't like whoever's raised first. You've just got to make that mathematical play. But with deeper stacks, you should hand select a lot more. All right, number 2, and this is absolutely key. Where possible, you want to play position. Play position. So position in Hold'em is massive. I know you know this, I know you've heard it, but I still bet, even if you've watched one of these videos before, that you don't adjust enough because most players don't. There should be a massive difference between how many hands you play in position and in late position than out of position in early position, right? That gap should be big. And when you're playing a good player or you've got a good player at your table, position makes an enormous difference because it doesn't matter if they're a complete poker wizard, right? Being out of position is still sucky. It still makes it tough for them. They're still not going to be able to get really creative against you super often if they're out of position. because they don't know what you're going to do, and because it's far more expensive, because if they lead out bet and you raise, or if they want to check raise or whatever, those can get into bloated pot situations where they still have a positional disadvantage. So they are going to play tighter against you because they have to. Now, they're not always going to play tight, but I am saying you have an advantage if you're in position, even if they're a better poker player than you. So where possible, play them in position. Think hard about being out of position against them very often. Now, this really sucks if you end up in a tournament with two great players on your left, right? That really sucks. The reality is you are going to have to lock it down. You're going to have to lock it down. You can't be making button steals if there are two pros and everyone's got medium or deep stacks. There are two pros in the blinds and they're just going to attack you. You can't be playing like trash hands unless you're prepared to defend it by 4-betting and then, or flatting and playing post flop, and then you're getting into big pots against the best players on the table. So normally the answer is to just play a lot less hands, play a lot tighter, play the value of your hands. Don't be scared ever. Like I said, don't be defensive. If you think you've got the best hand, you've still got to put the money in. Doesn't matter if, Isaac Haxton's sitting there, you've still got to put the money in. But you want to make better judgment and better selections if you're going to be out of position. By the way, I just realized I used the button and blinds example and you'd actually be in position. So disregard that. Focus on the general point. I will make mistakes. It's up to you to catch them. The key thing is you want to be in position as much as possible when you're playing a good player. It becomes more important than against a bad player. All right, number 3 is control the pot. Control the pot. So again, I just touched on this. We don't want to be playing big pots with marginal hands against really good players. Those are the situations we dread. So, having that hand that could be good or not, top pair, medium kicker or something, facing a raise, right? Against a really good aggressive player who's capable of all kinds of plays. Those are not the situations we want to be in. Now, you cannot ever completely determine this. Sometimes you are going to be in tough spots. That's poker, especially if you've got a good player and they happen to be on your left. You're not going to eliminate them all. But where possible, don't bloat the pot unless you have to, right? So don't 3-bet with that pair of 10s, flat call. Don't lead out with, a hand that isn't going to really suffer if you get raised. Occasionally mix things up. Like let's say you have Jack 10 and flop top pair. Occasionally check if you've got a really strong player on your left instead of continuation betting. That's got a number of advantages. It will induce him to bluff more and you could just call him down. It will stop the pot from getting bloated. It will stop you putting into a tough position, whether you raise or not. So this is a more defensive attitude, but we're in a bad situation if we're playing against a really good player and especially if they have position. So defense becomes the way to go. So where possible, control the size of the pot. Don't go for maximum value unless you've got, a real advantage against his range. Maybe check back the turn, instead of trying to bet all 3 streets for value or whatever it is. But control the pot where you might be in a marginal difficult situation and make your life a little bit simpler. All right, the next thing is to think clearly at all times. So think clearly. Look, I totally understand. Having said don't be intimidated at the poker table, you're a human being, I'm a human being. If you're playing someone that you know is good and you've seen them bullying people, or they're the local pro, or they're a famous name, or for whatever reason, it is going to be harder for you to make good poker decisions because your emotion's going to get involved. So when you're in this situation, acknowledge it and make an effort to take some deep breaths and say to yourself, I'm just going to make good poker decisions. Because remember, the cards don't know who's holding them, right? The flop doesn't know it's you and, some wizard playing the pot. So you have to play the situation to the best of your ability, right? And really emphasize thinking clearly. A tip that's always helped me is to imagine the hand is happening in a hand replayer online, like one of those really kind of simple graphic replayers, so that it's not you doing it. You're almost watching the hand play out, and that divorces you from the emotion. That might work for you. Do whatever it takes to take the emotion out and think super clearly and say to yourself, this is just a poker hand. I've got cards, there's cards on the flop. I'm going to make my decision based on those and based on what I think about my opponent. Do not make the mistake of assuming that the good player is just being super tricky and pulling these huge wizard moves all the time. If it's a really aggressive good player, then fine, you can categorize them. If you see them show down bluffs, you can think, okay, they've got a wide range, I'm going to adjust. but base your actions on what they actually do, not on the devils and demons in your head, right? Focus on what they actually do. This is the toughest player on the table, so you should be watching their hands from the start and really thinking about what they do, not their reputation or not what you think they're going to do. And then just make your best decisions against them. You cannot suddenly become as good a player as them in the moment, right? That'll happen over time. In the moment, you just need to play your best poker and think as clearly as you can. And lastly, I think this is critical, learn from them. Learn from them. Learn from them. So if you do find yourself at a table, online or live, with a really, really good player, don't have an ego about it. Accept that they're better than you, right? There's always someone better than us. And learn from them. What an opportunity to watch a really good player up close, maybe to play pots with them. Make a note of the decisions that they made and study them afterwards. Here's something you can do. You can even ask them on break why they played a hand a certain way. Most poker pros love talking about poker. It's their favorite thing. Now, if you're at the same table as them, maybe they won't want to. So maybe after you've moved or after you've bussed or at the end of the night or whatever. But even if you don't do that, take the opportunity to learn from them. A great question to ask in any poker game. It doesn't even have to be a super pro or a super good player, just a player that's doing better than you or winning effectively in your game. Ask, what is he doing or she doing that I'm not? What are they doing that I'm not? Where are they better than me? What do I need to go away and improve? And go from being worried about this and struggling to play against them and just thinking about losing against them, all that negative stuff, to a positive. See it as a massive opportunity. I've learned tons by being at the table with players better than me, just by studying them and thinking, okay, why are they doing that? What are they doing differently? What do I need to change to get to their level? You should do the same. It's a really, really great opportunity, great tip for you. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed making it. Enjoy the next time you play with a really good poker player. Let me know what you think. Any stories about playing with great players would be good as well. Put them in the comments below. If you've got any questions, I'll jump in and answer them. Give us a Facebook like and share it on social media so that you can share it with your poker playing friends and give them the benefit as well. All right, I'll talk to you again in another one of these very soon.